Back in 2019, I traveled to the Gambia and Senegal in West Africa. I was just doing personal exploration to learn about the culture, to learn more about our world. And when I was in Senegal, I was with a local friend who I had met. I was living with a local family who I had met, a local Senegalese family, an African family. And they noticed that I had vitiligo on my hands and my face. I've been protecting myself a lot right now, so you can't really see it, but vitiligo is white patches. I think I can put up a photo that shows some of the white patches on my hands. It's like maybe an autoimmune disease, some sort of partial albinism that I had. I don't know why I had it. I've had it for over 10 years now. Well, they saw it, and they thought that it would be a good idea if I saw a local, highly renowned holy man, an African holy man who they felt might be able to cure my vitiligo. Well, I've talked to a lot of doctors. I've actually even seen some shamans along the way, talked to herbal healers, different people. They've tried different things. Nothing has helped. That's not to say that something couldn't help, but I can't say I was so confident or believing that it would help. But I thought, why not? I'll try. At the very least, this will be interesting. Well, I went to him. He looked at me. He wasn't so sure that he could cure it, but he said he would try. He made me some different food, herbal medicine, things like that I tried. But it took over several days. So I was there for several days. And this is what brings up the real interest in the story for me. Because incidentally, he didn't cure my vitiligo. It's still there. It still comes back whenever it's really sunny and I don't wear a lot of sunscreen. Well, there were a lot of other people there. All African people. I was the only white guy there. So everybody there was African. And there was probably 40 or 50 other people there looking to him for treatment. Well, I got to talking with the people who were there. And I had a friend there who actually spoke English and was able to translate for me, because most of the people there didn't speak any Western languages. They just spoke various tribal languages of West Africa. And I learned that quite a few of the people there had been there a while. Like, I went 3 times, maybe for a total of like 6-7 hours at this place. There were people who had lived there for a couple of months. There was a whole compound there, lots of different huts. People could sleep there, they could stay there, they got all their food there. They prayed there together several times a day. The whole community came together and prayed. The holy man gave people treatment. The holy man's whole family lived there as well. He had a few people working there. But what I found interesting is everybody was there as part of a community. And what I saw, what I gathered, and when I talked to people, they said they really enjoyed living there. They got a really good feeling from living there. Well, they had to pay to be there though. So that made me question, well, how much does it cost? Because my treatment, 6-7 hours of treatment, I think it cost me like $3, which they considered, oh, it's a lot of money. Can you afford it? I'm like, yeah, no problem, $3. I realized a lot of the people there were paying, I think, like 20 cents a day, 30 cents a day, something like that to be there. Well, what made this really interesting for me is when I started to become comfortable with some of the people there, I asked my friend, I said, is it okay if you ask them for me why they came? I want to know what they were being treated for, because from what I gathered, they didn't really seem to have any visible problems that I could see. And what I learned is that several of the people there had been treated or were being treated for problems that if they had them in America or if they had them in Europe, they would be called psychosis. Hearing voices, seeing things that didn't exist, having really unusual or very considered strange ideas, bizarre ideas. That's what they had come for. And I became really interested. I'm like, how are they treating these people? Because the other thing is, I looked at these people and I didn't see any sign of anything that I would call psychosis. And I asked my friend about this. I'm like, do they seem like they have problems to you? Do they seem like they're insane to you? He says, no. It's because they're better. They're better. They're almost ready to go home, most of these people here. And I was like, oh, so they're better. What happened? Well, this is what came down to what was interesting. These people, in their own words, described to my friend who translated it to me what they felt their problems were. And they felt their problems were they had been possessed by evil spirits. Now, what was interesting is in my time in the Gambia and Senegal, I saw people out just in the regular world, in the different communities where I lived, where I'd say, that person looks like if they were in the West, they would be called psychotic. I saw people behaving really bizarrely. I could see people talking to themselves in different ways. And my friend even there, afterward, he said to me, yeah, those people they're possessed by evil spirits in different ways, demon-possessed even. And so I was curious, what had happened? What had happened in this community that had helped them? But before I even got the answer, I thought back to the films that I made on recovery from psychosis. Two of the films especially. My first film, Take These Broken Wings. My third film, Open Dialogue. Both of these films on good, healthy recovery from psychosis referred to the World Health Organization studies, I believe of the 1970s. And what they did is they compared treatment for psychosis, for schizophrenia especially, between the Western world, the rich world, the developed world, and the developing world, the poorer world. And one of the countries that they compared the Western world to in the developing world was Nigeria, also in West Africa. And what they found is that the results in Nigeria, and especially in one other developing country, in rural India, very poor India, their recovery rates from schizophrenia, this is diagnosed by Western doctors who went there to study this phenomenon. They weren't getting Western treatment, but they were just getting diagnosed. So they made sure they were comparing the same thing, that they found that recovery rates in the poor world, in the developing world, including West Africa, fairly near to where I was, were much, much better than in the West. Much better than in America and in various countries in Europe. And why was that? Well, one reason, and this is what was talked about in my film, was they weren't being given, most people, far, far majority in the developing world, in the poor world, were not being given really strong high doses of antipsychotics, or weren't being given antipsychotic medication at all. And in the West, that's treatment as usual. So that made me think. And that probably is a really, really big one. And then I think of what is our conception of psychosis generally in the West, in America, let's say, where I live, or Europe, where I've visited a lot of mental hospitals, visited a lot of different mental health treatment programs, mental health systems. The general attitude in American psychiatry, Western European psychiatry too, and spreading around the world, is that psychosis is a brain problem. You have a problem with your brain, and therefore it needs to be treated, this chemical imbalance problem in your brain, an unproven chemical imbalance, they've never proven it. This needs to be treated with biological treatments because you have a biological problem. Therefore, the best biological treatment you can get is antipsychotics. And by and large, that really doesn't help people that well. Yes, it can quell symptoms, sometimes for a while, sometimes for a long while, often with terrible side effects, but it doesn't help people work through their problems, which was the whole inspiration for me to go out and make films about programs that really help people get better. I'm talking get better without pills, get better where they came out the other side, went on, lived their lives, didn't get on disability, which is the general course of the progress of psychosis in the Western world. Give people all these drugs to quell their symptoms, and often they go right onto disability. They don't work, they don't move forward with their lives in many ways. Well, what's interesting that I saw just in this one little place, this one little compound that didn't even have walls, where everybody came voluntarily. The people told me they wanted to come there. They liked it there. They chose to come there. They felt this would help them. And then I thought, what did really help them? What was so helpful? And I think actually what I saw, when I thought about it, when I listened to them, it was actually something that was very parallel, very similar, or maybe just straight up the same as what I talked about in my films. And also I saw this as a therapist. When I was a therapist working with people with so-called psychosis, that it was community. And the fundamental part of community was human connection. People there were getting human connection. They were part of a group. They felt welcomed. They didn't feel stigmatized by this. They didn't feel like there was any problem with their brain. They just felt that something had kind of invaded them, and the point was to get rid of it. Interestingly now, when I think about it, when my conception of psychosis comes into the picture, I don't believe in evil spirit possession or demon possession. That's not my belief system at all. But I do believe that people have experienced terrible traumas. I heard that again and again. When I looked at people's childhoods, when I listened to people talk about their childhoods, I realized in a way they'd been invaded by evil spirits, the evil behavior often of their parents, of other people in their world, an evil system that they were raised in, sometimes an evil family system, an evil school system, an evil social environment that in a way did invade them, kind of parasitized them, got in there. And when people found a community that was loving, that was respectful, that didn't stick heavy toxic drugs into them, that in a way made them potentially lose themselves even more. When people found a loving community, a respectful connection, someone who listened, cared, believed in them, someone who had perhaps a similar belief system to what they had about their problems, a lot of times people got a lot better, if you want to use the word better. They felt more loved, they felt more cared about, they felt more connected to humanity. So often I think this thing called psychosis is about disconnection between people and other people, disconnection between people and humanity, disconnection socially. And so what I saw in Senegal is people being welcomed, people being loved, people being respected, people being treated as equal members of this group. And by being able to stay there and not having their families go bankrupt by keeping them there, just spending a little bit of money to be able to live there, to get good, nourishing food. Now, did the herbs help? Perhaps they did. But what I saw is it didn't look like these people were harmed by the herbs that they were taking, eating and drinking. Whereas so many times when I've met people who are on antipsychotics, so commonly, so often, it's like people, it looks like their spirits had been leaked away. And what I saw with these folks in West Africa is they looked alive, they looked passionate, they didn't look like they'd been zombified at all. And it just really made me think. It just really made me think about, well, sometimes the arrogance we have in the West with our science about knowing all the right answers, where sometimes I think the science may not be so scientific, and sometimes, well, we would actually do better to have an open mind, to question things a lot more, and maybe to learn from people who we might think we actually don't have that much to learn from.